This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Monday morning means a visit from Mike Penna, Horse Racing Radio Network. Good morning, Mike.
Seth, good morning. Happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you on board, particularly since you alerted me during the break. You're following your team, Pittsburgh. You're going to be in town for the Monday night game tonight.
Yeah, people think I'm really sick for making the trip up here after that last game against Cleveland, but I'm a loyal fan, so we're going to give them another shot here tonight in Pittsburgh, and hopefully they get it done on Monday Night Football.
And I was saying to you during the break, I give you credit because I don't even watch the Jets on television anymore. It's countdown to Syracuse basketball for me. It's a tough NFL season, and boy, it was tough for the Giant fans last night too up here in New York. There is no joy in Mudville up here in New York right now. But good luck to you tonight, and enjoy the Steelers game. All right, let's get into some of the stakes action. Before we do that, though, just want to tie it into last week on Horse Racing Radio Network and some of the guests you had. We're going to take a look right now at the Empire Classic. Before we do that, though, I do want to note one reason I pulled up the Empire Classic from Saturday at Belmont was because Saratoga Snacks is in there, and you had an interview with his owner, Bill Parcells.
I did. It was great. I had a chance to catch up with Bill this summer at Saratoga, and I've been waiting for the right time to play the interview back on the show. And I have to thank Hall of Fame trainer Shug McGahee for all his help in setting up that interview. He's very good friends with Bill Parcells, and he was able to arrange it for me. And we spent about 15 minutes at the training track, just one-on-one, talking racing. We didn't really talk football. I wanted to know about his life in racing and how he got started in the game. And he took me back to the beginning with going to the track with his dad in New Jersey and going all the way through. So it was really interesting. We have the interview posted on our website now at horseracingradio.net, and I would really encourage everybody to go back and take a listen to that.
Yeah, we had him on the Sunday morning program probably 2 summers ago. He and Gary Siaka were on it. He was very, very entertaining, and so I would advise people, go on to the Horse Racing Radio Network website and catch up with Bill Parcells, because he is a huge fan of the racing game, and I'm sure it was a great interview. And as I say, wanted to tie that in to the replay here we're going to watch of the Empire Classic on Saturday, because his Saratoga Snacks was in here. Saratoga Snacks went off at 5-2, second choice in the race. The favorite was Sue. Sue's the number 8 horse. I liked Sue from Mike Hushin. Sue, though, disappointed, running 7th in the field of 9. Saratoga Snacks, again, the second choice, runs 4th. I will note, Maggie Wolfendale, before the race, didn't like the looks of Saratoga Snacks, but Saratoga Snacks was the winner of this race last year. But the winner, very intriguing to me. A, it's Jimmy Jerkins, and B, it keeps the theme of the past month or so going. 3-year-olds beating older horses in some of these late-season stakes races, even as we see here on the New York bred side of things. So FNX gets it done at 17-1, the rank outsider. What were your thoughts on the Empire Classic?
Yeah, you're right about that trend. 3-year-olds beating older horses. It continues here and very well could continue in a couple of weeks in the Breeders' Cup Classic, because it looks like the 3-year-olds are the strongest in that group right now as well, with all the defections we've had in the older horse division. But yeah, FNX, here's the thing. He puts blinkers on for the first time, and those were the very same blinkers that Wicked Strong was wearing when he won the Wood Memorial at Aqueduct earlier this year. So if I were Jimmy Jerkins, I would never use another pair of blinkers other than the ones that he's been putting on these horses, because for whatever reason, they seem to work. And he really came home very, very strong. He had that late kick that really we haven't seen from FNX in quite some time. And Angel Arroyo, when he got off afterwards, was talking about that, and he said that the blinkers made a huge difference, especially through the stretch. He was more focused, and when he shifted him just to the outside, you remember he was down toward the inside when they turned for home, got him to the outside of So Lonesome. He really gave him that run, and according to Angel, it was all about the blinkers, and maybe a good move for Jimmy Jerkins here. It certainly looks like it.
Yeah, and I'll toss something else into the mix. Luis Saez was named to ride the horse. And Luis Saez, the brother of Juan Saez, who had that tragic fatal spill last week at Indiana Grand. But if what I read was correct, Angel Arroyo is Juan Saez's cousin. So it all kind of fit together, and Angel Arroyo had a really big day down there on Saturday. So it all kind of came around. But before we move on, let me talk to you a little bit about that. We talked last week, obviously, on the show, and talked to some of the folks I had via phone just to get their feelings. Boy, that was just so sad, and thankfully, it happens so seldom, but it just reminds you how dangerous the sport is and puts it back into perspective.
Yeah, it really does. It was sad. It was tragic. Not enough words there to kind of put that into perspective, certainly. But, yeah, I mean, I talk about this a lot with Permanently Disabled Jockey Fund being the official charity of the Horse Racing Radio Network. I work with a lot of disabled riders, and I do things to raise money for that organization to help disabled riders that have given our sport so much and now no longer can support themselves and enjoy the style of living that they once did. And when you think about what riders go through before a race, and they get the instructions from the trainer, and then they get the leg up, and Seth, they never know if they're coming back. And unfortunately, that is the reality of this sport. It's the only sport in the world where you have an ambulance that follows the athletes around the playing surface, and it's a very, very dangerous game. Most of the time, thankfully, these injuries don't result in catastrophic injuries. They don't result in death, but unfortunately, every once in a while they do, and it hits you in the face. It's a slap of reality, and we really do remember how dangerous this sport is, and tip your hat to all the folks that get out there and do that each and every day.
Yeah, it just kind of brought things and put it back in perspective last week. 17 years old, it was very tough. And then a couple, just in a weird coincidence of timing, a couple of fatal injuries with jockeys over in Australia as well. So it was a tough week, but again, it kind of brought it back into perspective. Let's shift attention. Hard to do it after things like that. I did it a couple times last week and said it's hard to get back into racing. But again, on a more enjoyable note, shift to the racing action again from last weekend, and really nice performance down in your backyard at Keeneland on Saturday. The stakes action, that state-bred stakes action in New York, the Maryland Millions, it made for kind of an interesting weekend in this lull period. But as far as graded stakes action, I thought the Raven Run was very interesting and showcased a horse who I think in the filly and mare division going forward, sprint division, is going to be very, very intriguing. We're going to watch the Raven Run stretch run. Number 5, Taurus, is going to get it done at a very generous 7-1. I have to say, I jumped in and took a little of that action. Number 12, Sweet Risky, runs second for Todd Pletcher. Number 2, Thank You, Mary Lou, will run third. Another horse that I found intriguing in the race was the number 11, Misbehavior, for Phil Schoenthal. Had run well up here in a couple of stake starts at Saratoga, followed that up with a big win in the Charlestown Oaks. Well, Misbehavior kind of took the worst of the battle with Taurus as Taurus runs away and Misbehavior fades after a little speed duel early. But boy, as we're watching the stretch run here, Mike, as I say, I think this is going to be a real player in this female sprint division going forward.
Yeah, no doubt. She's an absolute freak. And this effort against a very, very good field in the Lexus Raven Run was absolutely sensational. Not only did she take the field wire to wire, Seth, but she wins by more than 9 lengths. And the final running time, she won. We were positioned for our coverage. We were positioned right above the finish line, so we had a great vantage point. And she won ear down. Her ears were pricking back and forth. The final running time, 1:21.32, was the fastest running of the Raven Run since Champion Informed Decision in 2008. And keep in mind, that was on Polytrack, so that was ultra impressive for Informed Decision. But now we see this filly jump up and run this monster performance. She's undefeated when she's been sprinting. Her only poor effort coming in the Grade 3 Honeybee 2 starts, well, now 3 starts ago at Oaklawn Park back in March. That was around 2 turns at a mile and a 16th. That doesn't appear to be her game. She's extremely, extremely good when she's sprinting. They're not going to go to the Breeders' Cup with her. You're probably going to see her point for a 2015 campaign and probably point for a filly and mare sprint entry next year when she comes to Keeneland.
Yeah, you would think so, certainly, and particularly now with the win over the track. And you ever had Todd Beatty on as on your Trainer Talk segment?
You know, I have not. It's funny because I thought that same thing afterwards. You remember last week we talked about trainer Niall Seville.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I'll have Niall join me on the show, and he is going to join me this coming Wednesday. So you'll look forward to hearing that interview. But, yeah, Todd Beattie would be an interesting individual. I'd love to have him on.
Yeah, he's a guy, I mean, he's based at Penn National, but over the years he's had a couple of horses like this who have kind of stood up and made a little bit of a name for himself. I think this is probably the best of those, though, and she's going to be very interesting, as I say, going forward. Also at Keeneland on the weekend yesterday, it was the Dowager. $125,000, a mile and a half on the turf, and I handicapped in here yesterday on the handicapping show, and Keeneland was my assignment. So I looked at this race. I had the eventual winner, White Rose, in the mix, a little bit down in the mix in the third spot after scratches. I thought Cat's Claw from Jonathan Shepard would maybe rebound to that nice Weah effort we saw up at Saratoga earlier this summer. Cat's Claw, an okay fourth in this race. Cat's Claw is going to be the number 2 horse, but it's going to be the old 14-13 exacta. It's going to be White Rose 14 over 13 Carolyn Thomas, and Carolyn Thomas was the 3-1 favorite for trainer Barclay Tagg. We'll watch him come down the stretch here, Mike. What were your thoughts on the Dowager?
Well, it was such an exciting race, and every time we see this type of a finish in a marathon race such as this, we say, how is that even possible that they can go that far and basically hit the line together? And that's what happened with White Rose and Caroline Thomas. And Seth, this was really kind of fun to watch because she is White Rose, appropriately named, because she really is pretty much white in appearance. And you see her come down the stretch against that emerald green turf course at Keeneland, and it was just beautiful to watch. And she was in the clear on the outside. Carolyn Thomas with Joe Rocco Jr. had to dive in between horses. Looked like she was going to burst through for the victory. And then White Rose just kept coming. She had the momentum on the outside and able to get that nose in front. But she's really on a roll right now. She's won 3 of her last 4. Bill Mott's assistant trainer, Kenny McCarthy, was on hand at Keeneland. He said that they always felt like as she got older, she would get better. And that's what we're seeing from White Rose. And really nice win under Sean Bridgman.
Yeah, very nice. And again, a nice full field, favorite in there. You always know when you see a 3-1 favorite, it's a field, big field that the betting public can't really settle on. The 14-13 exacta pays a nice $82. So it not only a nice race, but some nice value for the bettors there with some horses that were fairly logical in the mix also. All right, let's shift our attention to yesterday. Look at Woodbine. Canada, the Canadian International Grade 1 event, $1 million on the line, mile and a half. And really, the storyline in this race may have been before the race even went off. The favorite, and we talked last week with Keith McCalmont from Woodbine, we talked about Brown Panther coming in off the Irish St. Ledger win. Keith said the horse that looked very good in the morning up there since arriving, but Brown Panther dumps the jockey before the race and winds up to be a late scratch. But what's interesting, one European out, the other European gets it done. Number 7, Hillstar, will be the winner in here as the 6-5 choice. Big Blue Kitten, however, doesn't make it easy, getting a nice late run. Big Blue Kitten is the number 9 horse. Mark Cassie's Dynamic Sky runs third. What were your thoughts on the International?
Yeah, and it really does speak to the strength of the Europeans, or maybe the lack of strength of the American turf horses, because Hillstar, not considered to be, even though he's a nice horse, he's not the top European turf horse that we could have seen come over for this race, or even looking ahead to the Breeders' Cup. And yeah, he ran a gigantic race. Big Blue Kitten did everything that he could do. He put in his run like he always does. He's as honest as the day is long. He comes up just a little bit short. For jockey Ryan Moore, what can you say? I mean, it seems like every time Ryan shows up for these big races here in the States, whether it's a race like this or the Breeders' Cup, he's going to the winner's circle. He now wins the race for the second consecutive year. Sir Michael Stout, the trainer of Hillstar, wins his second Canadian International, having saddled Singspiel in 1996. And, when you look at the final running time here, Seth, 2:29 flat, the fastest since Champs-Élysées in 2009. Pretty good effort from Hillstar, and as I said, a good effort from Big Blue Kitten, who is going to end up second under Joel Rosario. But nice race for both of those horses.
And I'll also talk a little bit about a horse I mentioned when we talked about this race a couple of days ago. The Pizza Man, I thought ran a pretty good fourth in here, showed some early speed. And the Pizza Man, just one of those fun horses to watch, Illinois bred, who kind of came to the forefront this summer with some Open Company Stakes wins at Arlington. Tossed in, a little bit of a dud, given that the horse went off as a 6-5 favorite and the Northern Dancer on the move up to Woodbine last time. So I give him credit for coming back. And, again, a fourth place finish from a horse like that, pretty good effort, given, the level of the competition. I tip my cap to them for trying it, so I'll say that was a good effort. But Hillstar, as you note, just again kind of exposing American or North American turf runners when these Europeans come over. I mean, I'm not even sure he would have been second string. I'm thinking Hillstar probably third string.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, he wasn't on my radar as being one of those Euros to watch, but when you had a race like this, and there were so many other question marks on the North American-based runners, then he was one that you certainly had to look at. And then with the scratch of Brown Panther and Hillstar being bet down to 6-5, he was an obvious contender in here. And when you look ahead to what we might see at Santa Anita, and you think about the American turfers, both in the mile with Wise Dan now being out, and then in the Breeders' Cup turf, you have to wonder who's going to jump up from this side of the pond and be able to knock off some of those Euros that are going to come over, and I'm not sure there is anybody.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very intriguing to see pre-entries today. We'll get an idea of who's going on Wednesday when those are released. And with Beholder now on the sidelines and Wise Dan on the sidelines, we got to figure out what the marquee story and marquee horses are going to be, but we'll get a look at that on Wednesday. Speaking of the Breeders' Cup, Mike, before we let you go, just want to talk. You are based down in Keeneland. You're a regular over there. They announced a couple days ago 28,000 tickets for the 2 days at Keeneland, but they're going to have some, and as I said earlier on the show, I kind of labeled it venues within the venue. They'll have over 40,000 on the Keeneland campus, but 28,000 on the racetrack itself. And we speculated since they announced Keeneland how they would manage the crowd, what the size would be. And I found it interesting. The Daily Racing Form article said Keeneland record was over 40,000, a little bit over 40,000, but even the Keeneland folks themselves said very uncomfortable, long lines at concessions and betting windows. They wanted the experience to be comfortable and fun for folks, so they're going to have a 28,000 limit. As a regular out at Keeneland, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the Racing Form article is absolutely right, because I have been there now on several Bluegrass days, several All-Star weekends when you do get those record crowds, and it's kind of miserable. You can't move. It is hard to make any kind of a wager. It's difficult to get any kind of a refreshment or anything at the concession stand. So I think it's the right move. We knew going into this Breeders' Cup that with Keeneland being a much smaller track, that it was going to be more of a made-for-TV, kind of a boutique type of event, and I think Breeders' Cup was okay with that. They are going to have, as you said, different areas throughout the racetrack, and even outside in the tailgate area. That's one thing about Keeneland. Folks do come out and they do tailgate before the races in the spring and in the fall meets. So Breeders' Cup's going to take advantage of that. They'll have betting terminals outside. They'll have Jumbotron TVs outside, and they'll make it easy for people to make their wagers and enjoy the Breeders' Cup if they want to tailgate. However, you're talking about Lexington, Kentucky in the beginning of November, and that's always a crapshoot with the weather. It could be snowing. It could be 75 degrees, and it's just going to be one of those things where Breeders' Cup's going to have to hold their breath and keep their fingers crossed and hope they get good weather.
Yeah, we'll see. It was interesting, the announcement made, though, and I agree. I think if the place is jammed and uncomfortable with 40, to limit it, but to have that option, as you say, out in the tailgate area for folks who want to come and enjoy the experience, that was probably the way to go. Mike?
And Bill Thomason, the president of Keeneland, and not to interrupt you, Seth, but he did tell me in an interview not too long ago that the number one focus was that if they get the people there, they want to be able to service everybody that comes out. So if you did go to 40,000, they obviously didn't feel like they could service those people adequately, and they want to make sure that everybody does have a good experience.
And again, that's absolutely the right decision, because it's a big day of racing. It's a premium ticket, and you want people to have a premium experience. So it seems like they're making the right move there. And again, allowing for a larger crowd if you want to come and enjoy the experience. And we should reiterate, again, I've seen that tailgate area and betting windows and large screen televisions. That'll be a fun place to watch if you just want to go and experience it as well.
Yeah, it will. It will. And they're working with the University of Kentucky now because UK is scheduled to play a football game against Tennessee on that Breeders' Cup Saturday, and they're trying to get that moved to either a late night game or maybe even moved to a different date. But they're working through some issues there with both schools, and hopefully they'll get that resolved. I'm sure that's front and center on their list right now.
That's intriguing. Now, if they moved it to a night game, that may be a great doubleheader for people. Maybe that's.
It would be amazing.
Yeah.
They'll have to move it late enough. They're looking at maybe trying to get it to, say, like a 9 o'clock Eastern start, from what I understand. And if they could do that, then it would play out beautifully. Because one thing that Keeneland does in the fall meet often is they'll have those night games with UK, and people will come up. They did it earlier this year with South Carolina, and all the South Carolina fans came out to the track during the day, and then they go tailgate at the football game and watch the football game at night, and it is a pretty awesome doubleheader.
Yeah, that sounds like a great doubleheader, no question about it. So we'll see how that works out. Mike, as always, we appreciate the visit and the recap. We'll tell people again, stop by the Horse Racing Radio Network website for the archives and to see what's coming up. Mike, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Seth. I appreciate it. And just very quickly, next Saturday on the Equine Forum, I had a chance this week to sit down for a full half hour with Hall of Fame golfer Gary Player. And I'm going to play the entire interview next Saturday morning on the Equine Forum, 8 o'clock Eastern. So trust me, he was amazing. Do not miss
deeply
it.
into the horse racing game, too.
Loves it. Loves it. He has a farm in South Africa. He's one of the leading breeders. It was such an enjoyable visit. And one-on-one for a half hour with Gary Player. It was pretty cool.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. And as you noted when we were in the commercial break earlier, you're headed out to Southern California. So when we talk to you next week, we'll have a little update as far as leading into the Breeders' Cup as well. So we look forward to that.
Thanks, Seth.
All right. Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network. We'll take our next break.